Far beyond the stars, there was a dark planet called Drakmor. No humans had ever lived there. The planet was covered with giant mountains, burning rivers, and deep caves where powerful dragons ruled the skies. Every creature feared them. Even the strongest alien armies stayed away from Drakmor. The dragons believed that only the strong deserved to live. They had one simple law: weakness had no place in their world. For thousands of years, nothing had ever broken that law. On one cold night, a small escape pod fell from the sky. It crashed deep inside the Dragon Valley, sending fire and dust into the air. The sound echoed across the mountains. Every dragon looked toward the smoke with angry eyes. They thought an enemy had dared to enter their land. Soon, dozens of dragons flew toward the crash site, ready to destroy whoever had landed without permission. When the dragons reached the broken pod, they found something they had never seen before. Inside was a tiny human baby, wrapped in a thin blue blanket. The baby was crying softly. There were no weapons, no soldiers, and no message explaining why the child had been left there. The dragons looked at each other in complete silence. A helpless creature had somehow reached the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. The Dragon King stepped forward. He was older than any living dragon, and his golden eyes could see fear inside anyone. He looked at the baby for several long seconds. The other dragons expected him to order the child's death. That was the dragon way. No weak creature could survive on Drakmor. But before the king could speak, something impossible happened. The baby suddenly stopped crying. Instead of showing fear, he smiled at the Dragon King. Then he reached out his tiny hand and gently touched the king's huge claw. A warm, golden light appeared around them for only a second before disappearing. Every dragon stepped back in shock. They had never seen dragon magic react to a human before. Even the oldest dragons could not explain what had just happened. Some dragons believed the child was cursed. Others thought he was a trap sent by their enemies. A few wanted to destroy him immediately before anything worse happened. But the Dragon King stayed completely still. Deep inside his heart, he felt something he had not felt for hundreds of years: hope. It made no sense, yet he could not ignore it. The strange light had awakened an ancient memory that even he had almost forgotten. Long ago, an old prophecy had spoken about a child from another world. It said that when darkness covered the galaxy, a small outsider would stand beside dragons and change the fate of every living race. Most dragons believed the prophecy was only a myth. No one had ever expected it to involve a human baby. The king wondered if destiny had finally arrived at his doorstep. The Dragon King slowly lifted the baby into his massive arms. The child laughed happily instead of crying. The other dragons stared in complete disbelief. Their fearless king had chosen to protect the weakest creature in the galaxy. None of them understood why. Some bowed their heads while others quietly promised that this decision would bring disaster to every dragon alive. Far above the mountains, hidden among the stars, a giant black warship silently watched the entire scene. Its commander smiled as strange red symbols appeared across the ship's screen. The human baby had been found exactly as planned. The dragons believed they had rescued an innocent child, but they had no idea that the greatest hunt in galactic history had just begun. The Dragon King carried the baby back to the great mountain where the oldest dragons lived. It was the safest place on Drakmor. The caves were filled with glowing crystals that gave off soft blue light, and rivers of warm lava flowed beneath the stone floors. Every dragon watched the tiny human with curious eyes. They had fought powerful monsters and defeated alien empires, but none of them knew how to care for a human child. Many dragons gathered before the king. They believed keeping the baby alive would only bring danger to their world. One dragon, General Varkon, stepped forward with anger in his voice. He reminded everyone that humans were weak and did not belong among dragons. If enemies came looking for the child, Drakmor would be dragged into a war that was not theirs. Several dragons agreed and demanded the baby be sent away before it was too late. The Dragon King listened quietly before speaking. His deep voice filled the cave. He said the child would stay under his protection, and anyone who challenged that decision would answer to him. No dragon dared to argue further. Although many were unhappy, they respected the king more than anyone else. From that day, the human baby became the only non-dragon ever allowed to live inside the great mountain. The dragons named him Arin, a word in their ancient language that meant gift of fire. As the days passed, Arin surprised everyone. He never cried when dragons roared around him. Instead, he laughed and reached for their giant faces. Even the fiercest dragons slowly became softer whenever the little boy smiled at them. They did not understand why, but his presence brought peace to the mountain. Years passed quickly. Arin grew into a curious young boy with bright eyes and endless questions. He climbed rocks faster than most dragon cubs and never showed fear of the giant creatures around him. Every morning, he trained with the young dragons. They learned to fly while Arin learned to run across sharp cliffs without falling. Whenever he failed, he stood up and tried again. The dragons admired his courage. One day, while practicing near the fire lake, Arin noticed a small dragon trapped beneath a heavy rock. The other dragon cubs were too frightened to help because the ground around the lake was cracking. Without thinking about his own safety, Arin rushed forward. He pushed with all his strength until the young dragon escaped. Just as they moved away, the ground broke apart, and hot lava burst into the air. The dragons were shocked. Arin had risked his own life to save someone much stronger than himself. General Varkon had watched everything from a nearby cliff. For the first time, he questioned his own belief that humans were only weak creatures. Strength was not always about sharp claws or fire. Sometimes it was about choosing to protect others, even when fear filled your heart. That night, the Dragon King called Arin into a secret chamber hidden deep inside the mountain. The walls were covered with ancient carvings older than any living dragon. In the center stood a glowing crystal taller than a house. The king explained that this crystal held the memories of dragon history. Only chosen dragons could touch it. No outsider had ever been allowed near it. Arin slowly placed his hand on the crystal. The moment his fingers touched its surface, the entire chamber shook. Bright golden light exploded through the room. Ancient dragon symbols began glowing across the walls. Strange voices echoed through the cave as if the spirits of old dragons had awakened after thousands of years. Even the Dragon King stepped back in surprise. The crystal showed a vision. Arin saw countless stars burning in darkness. Giant alien fleets destroyed entire planets while dragons fought desperately against them. Then, in the middle of the battle, a human warrior stood beside the Dragon King, holding a sword made of golden fire. The warrior's face slowly became clear. It was Arin. The light disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. The chamber became silent again. Arin looked at the Dragon King with confused eyes, but the old dragon looked far more worried than before. The ancient prophecy was no longer just a story. It was beginning to come true. Far away in deep space, the black warship received another signal from Drakmor. The commander smiled as he watched the glowing energy recorded by his scanners. "He has awakened," he whispered. "Prepare the fleet. Soon, the dragons will lose their precious human." After the vision inside the ancient crystal, everything changed. The Dragon King no longer saw Arin as only a child. He believed the boy carried a destiny that could change the future of the galaxy. From that day forward, Arin's training became harder. Every sunrise began with running across high cliffs, climbing icy mountains, and learning to survive in the wild without help. The dragons wanted him to become strong in both body and mind. As the years passed, Arin grew into a brave young man. He was still human, but he had learned the ways of dragons. He could read the stars, track dangerous beasts, and stay calm even when facing giant monsters. Although he could not breathe fire or fly, his speed, intelligence, and courage often surprised the dragons. They no longer called him an outsider. To them, Arin had become part of their family. General Varkon, who had once wanted the human baby gone, now trained Arin every day. His lessons were the toughest of all. He taught Arin that true strength was not about winning every battle. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves. Arin never complained, no matter how difficult the training became. Every failure pushed him to work even harder. One afternoon, while Arin was exploring the forest near the mountains, he heard a loud cry for help. He quickly ran toward the sound and found a group of small alien traders surrounded by giant shadow beasts. The frightened aliens had crashed their transport ship and were trapped. The beast slowly moved closer, ready to attack. Without waiting for help, Aaron grabbed his spear and charged forward. He knew he could not defeat all the beasts alone, but he refused to leave innocent people behind. He distracted the monsters, giving the aliens enough time to escape. Just as one huge beast prepared to strike him, a young dragon landed beside Aaron and covered the area with a wall of fire. Together, they defeated the creatures. The rescued aliens stared at Aaron with disbelief. They had never imagined seeing a human fighting beside dragons. Before leaving, their leader thanked Aaron and promised that the galaxy would remember what he had done. Aaron simply smiled. He had not fought for fame. He had fought because it was the right thing to do. News of the battle spread across nearby star systems. Many believed the story was impossible. Some laughed and called it a myth. Others became curious. But there was one group that took the news very seriously. The commander of the Black warship finally confirmed what he had been waiting for. The human child was alive, and he was becoming stronger every year. The commander ordered his fleet to move toward Drakmor. Hundreds of dark warships entered the edge of the Dragon system without being seen. Their mission was simple: capture Aaron alive. If that failed, destroy him before the prophecy could come true. The commander knew the dragons would fight to protect the young human, but he was ready for war. That same night, the Dragon King stood alone on the highest mountain. He looked at the stars with a heavy heart. For many years, he had hoped the enemies would never find Aaron. Now he knew that hope was gone. The war he had feared for so long was finally coming to Drakmor. Suddenly, the peaceful night sky flashed with red lights. Giant enemy ships appeared above the planet, blocking out the stars. Warning roars echoed across the mountains as every dragon looked toward the sky. The invasion had begun. Aaron stepped outside the great mountain and watched the enormous fleet descend through the clouds. He tightened his grip on his spear. The peaceful life he had known was over. The enemy had finally arrived, and they had come for only one person. The sky above Drakmor burned red as hundreds of enemy warships filled the clouds. Their engines shook the mountains, and dark shadows covered the land. Every dragon let out a powerful roar that echoed across the planet. The Dragon King spread his massive wings and flew into the air. Behind him, thousands of dragons followed without fear. They had protected their home for thousands of years, and they would never surrender it. Aaron stood at the entrance of the great mountain, watching the enemy fleet grow closer. His heart was beating fast, but he did not run. General Varkon walked beside him and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Today," he said, "you fight not as a human, but as a dragon of this family." Aaron nodded quietly. He picked up his spear and looked toward the sky with determined eyes. The first enemy ships opened fire. Bright blue energy blasts crashed into the mountains, sending rocks flying in every direction. The dragons answered with rivers of fire that filled the sky. Explosions flashed everywhere as dragons slammed into the warships with incredible force. The peaceful planet turned into a battlefield within seconds. Aaron rushed toward a group of frightened dragon cubs trapped beneath falling rocks. Enemy soldiers had landed nearby and were moving closer. Without wasting a moment, Aaron fought the soldiers one by one. He was smaller and weaker than they were, but he moved quickly and used the rocky ground to his advantage. After a fierce battle, he defeated the last soldier and helped the young dragons escape to safety. Far above the battlefield, the Black warship slowly opened its giant front gate. A tall figure wearing dark armor stepped out. His name was Commander Zarek, the leader of the invasion. His cold eyes were fixed on Aaron. He had searched for the human since the day the escape pod landed on Drakmor. Now, after many years, his target finally stood before him. Zarek landed in front of Aaron with hundreds of soldiers behind him. He smiled and spoke calmly. "You were never abandoned," he said. "You were created." Aaron looked at him with confusion. Zarek revealed a terrible secret. Years ago, a powerful alien empire had secretly created human children with special energy inside them. Aaron was the only one who survived. The escape pod had not crashed by accident. Someone had sent him to Drakmor to hide him from the empire. The truth hit Aaron like a storm. Everything he believed about his past was suddenly uncertain. Before he could ask another question, Zarek attacked. Their battle shook the ground as spear met energy blade. Aaron fought with everything he had learned from the dragons, but Zarek was faster and far more experienced. Blow after blow forced Aaron backward until he fell to one knee. Just as Zarek raised his weapon for the final strike, the Dragon King landed between them with a thunderous roar. His fire pushed the enemy commander back, giving Aaron time to stand again. The old dragon looked at Aaron with calm eyes. "Your past does not decide who you are," he said. "Your choices do." Inspired by those words, Aaron stood once more. At that moment, a warm golden light began to shine from his body. The same mysterious energy that had appeared when he was a baby surrounded him again. Every dragon stopped fighting for a moment. Even Zarek looked shocked. The ancient prophecy was awakening before their eyes. The light spread across the battlefield, making every dragon stronger while weakening the enemy soldiers. The Dragon King realized that Aaron's power had finally awakened, but he also knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the stars, the rulers of the alien empire would feel this energy. And once they did, they would come to Drakmor themselves. The golden light spread across the battlefield like a rising sun. Every dragon felt new strength flow through their bodies. Their tired wings became powerful again, and their flames burned brighter than ever before. On the other side, the enemy soldiers struggled to stand. Their weapons became weak and fear filled their hearts. Even Commander Zarek could not believe what he was seeing. The human he had hunted for years had awakened a power no empire could control. Aaron slowly stepped forward, surrounded by the glowing light. He looked at the frightened dragons, the wounded soldiers, and the burning mountains. He did not want endless war. He wanted to protect the family that had raised him. The Dragon King smiled proudly. The small baby found inside a broken escape pod had become a brave young man whose first thought was to save others, not himself. Commander Zarek roared with anger and charged at Aaron one last time. Their final battle was fierce. Sparks flew through the air as spear and energy blade crashed together again and again. Zarek was stronger than any enemy Aaron had ever faced, but Aaron remembered every lesson the dragons had taught him. He stayed calm, watched carefully, and waited for the perfect moment. When Zarek made one small mistake, Aaron moved faster than ever before and struck his weapon from his hand. The enemy commander fell to his knees. He looked at Aaron with disbelief. "Finish me," Zarek said quietly. But Aaron lowered his spear instead. "Real strength is not killing those who have already lost," he replied. "Real strength is giving them a chance to choose a better path." The dragons watched in silence. Aaron had shown the greatest lesson of all, mercy. Seeing their commander defeated, the remaining enemy soldiers dropped their weapons. One by one, the warships turned away from Drakmor and disappeared into deep space. The battle was finally over. For the first time in many years, peace returned to the dragon world. The mountains became quiet again and the skies filled with the sound of dragons celebrating their victory. A few days later, leaders from many alien worlds arrived on Drakmor. They had heard the unbelievable story of a human raised by dragons who had saved an entire planet. Some had once feared dragons, while others had never trusted humans. But after seeing Aaron and the Dragon King standing side by side, they realized that courage and kindness were stronger than fear and hate. The Dragon King called everyone together before the ancient crystal. In front of dragons and alien leaders alike, he placed his great claw on Aaron's shoulder. "From this day forward," he announced, "Aaron is not only a son of dragons, he is the guardian of the galaxy." The crowd filled the valley with cheers that echoed across the mountains. That night, Aaron stood alone on the highest cliff looking at the stars. He remembered the tiny escape pod, the dragons who had protected him, and the family that had never treated him as an outsider. He understood that heroes were not born because of power. They became heroes because they chose to stand for others even when the odds were impossible. Far away in deep space, a small group of survivors from Zarek's fleet watched Drakmor from a distance. One officer asked if they should return with another army. Zarek looked at the planet for a long moment before shaking his head. "No," he said quietly. as long as the human stands with the dragons. No empire will ever conquer this galaxy. The story of Aaron spread from one star system to another. Parents told their children about the abandoned human baby who was raised by dragons. Soldiers remembered his courage. Kings remembered his wisdom. Dragons remembered him as family. And across the galaxy, whenever hope seemed lost, people repeated the same words.